Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome back to my channel and to the new Eon Agora series. Right now, some of the richest men on the planet are giving lecture series about the Antichrist. Billionaire robber baron Peter Thiel has literally spent hours in closed-door talks outlining his personal theory of how an Antichrist figure might rise, and then warning about one-world government, climate policy, and global institutions as the sign of 666. Commentators point out that he treats religion as a weapon in political warfare, not just as a private faith. That kind of rhetoric plugs straight into the bloodstream of Christian nationalism. The idea that any move toward global cooperation or social progress is secretly the mark of the beast. It turns theology into a tool for fear-mongering, for keeping people terrified of a world that is changing. But here is the question that I want to explore in this video. What if 666 is not a barcode on your forehead, not a secret UN plot, not even a future dictator out there somewhere, but a symbol of a solar, life-giving power inside you? And what if the so-called beast is not an enemy of God, but a symbol of your own awakening? In this video deep dive, I want to walk you through how Aleister Crowley, the infamous Great Beast 666, turned the Christian myth of the Antichrist completely upside down. We will look at what the Antichrist means in the Christian tradition, how Crowley reclaimed the number 666 in Thelema, and why the tabloids decided that he was literally Satan on legs, and finally at how all this crystallizes in his vision of the last card in the Thoth Tarot. By the end, you should have a very different sense of what beast and Antichrist can mean, and why handling those symbols over to billionaire doom preachers might be a proper mistake. So let us start at the beginning. In the New Testament, the word Antichrist does not initially mean one single supervillain. The first epistle of John talks about many Antichrists, by which it simply means deceivers and false teachers who deny Christ. Only later Christian imagination fuses this into one apocalyptic figure who shows up at the end of time. It's the book of Revelation that gives us the famous beast. John of Patmos describes one monstrous ruler rising from the sea, demanding worship and persecuting all the saints. Then he drops the riddle that has obsessed people ever since. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. It is the number of a man, and his number is 666. That is 666. Early Christians, for which the Apocalypse was written, were very much less confused than modern conspiracy theorists. They very often read 666 as the code for Nero Caesar, the brutal Roman emperor who persecuted Christians. If you take Nero Caesar, written in Hebrew letters, and add them up using gematria, you get 666. The beast, in other words, is a tyrant who claims divine honors and crushes dissent. Over time, that image gets generalized into the Antichrist, the final man of lawlessness, who impersonates a messiah and leads the world astray. Symbolically, 666 becomes the anti-number. In Christian numerology, 7 is the sacred fullness, so 777 can stand for divine perfection or even the Trinity. 666 is then read as a sort of counterfeit Trinity, an almost but not quite, a crooked echo of holiness. The Antichrist is imagined as a dark mirror of Christ, a false savior who brings a brief empire of terror before Christ returns and destroys him. And so that is the theological background. Now enter one Aleister Crowley. Crowley grows up in a strict fundamentalist household in England, the Plymouth Brethren. His mother, horrified by this rebellious streak, calls him the beast as a religious insult. And instead of shrinking from it, he leans into it, even as a teenager. Later, as an adult occultist, he adopts the title in full and in Greek, Thaumegatherion, the Great Beast, whose letters in Greek add to 666. For the public, especially in pious Edwardian England, that sounds like the most blasphemous thing you could possibly do. If the Antichrist is the Beast 666, surely a man calling himself the Beast 666 must be volunteering for the job. Crowley, however, is playing a very different game. In the Revelation text that founded his magical-mystical philosophy of Thelema, Liber al vel legis, the speaker, Ivas, declares Crowley to be the prince priest of the beast, and assigns him a partner, the Scarlet Woman. And Crowley accepts this as a prophetic role. He does believe he fulfills the beast symbolism from Revelation, but not as a satanic impostor. For him, those prophecies are distorted glimpses of a spiritual new age, the Aeon of Horus, which the old Christian worldview could only interpret as horror. And at the heart of this interpretation sits, once again, the number 666. In Qabalistic magic, 666 is certainly not a number of doom. It belongs to the sun. In the ceremonial tradition, there is a 6x6 square of the sun, its kamea. Each row adds to 111, and all the 36 numbers together add to 666. Crowley points this out again and again as a kind of maybe cosmic joke, even leaning into the idea that you may well call him a kind of little sunshine rather than the devil. The number that the Christian fear as the mark of damnation is, in his system, the signature of the life-giving star that makes existence possible. And it's hard not hear an ironic echo of this in Ghost's song Call Me Little Sunshine, where a sort of Luciferian presence is cast as a darkly comforting, ever-present light. He also reminds us that Revelation itself hints at 666 as the number of a man. For him, that is the key. 666 represents the fully awakened human, the person who realizes his solar, divine nature instead of crawling in the dust. Where Christian theology saw a symbol of corrupted power, Crowley instead reads a symbol of realized power. And this leads directly into his maybe infamous statement about the devil. Crowley loved to write sentences that sound shocking if you take them at face value. But behind the theater, there is a clear philosophical move. In Liber ABA, Magic in Theory and Practice, he writes that the devil does not exist. That what we call the devil, he says, is simply the name that a religion gives to the god of the people it hates. He then reclaims the serpent of Eden and the figure of Satan as the bringer of knowledge, in a very Gnostic move, if we want. It is the serpent who tells humanity, know thyself. It is the tempter who gives us the capacity to tell good from evil instead of living in blind obedience. For Crowley, that initiatory force is not evil at all. It is the necessary shock that turns an animal into a god. And in that line, he even links the idea of the Holy Guardian Angel with the Luciferian principle. He talks about the solar phallic Hermetic Lucifer as his angel, the inner divine guide who appears in the costume that Christianity had demonized. So the Beast 666 then is the human being who consciously allied with that inner light rather than projecting it outward and then fearing it. But of course, none of this subtlety survived contact with the tabloids. In the early 20th century, British newspaper discovered that you could sell a lot of copies by calling Crowley a Satanist, a baby sacrificer, and the wickedest man in the world. They took his titles, his magical mottos, his talk of 666, and stripped away all the context. The average reader did not see the Thelemic philosophy. They saw a man who called himself the Beast, who wrote rituals with goats and naked people, who insulted Christianity, and who took a lot of drugs. Crowley knew that what he was doing in provoking that reaction. He enjoyed the scandal. He liked to see who would recoil in horror at the number 666 and who would bother to look underneath the mask. His longtime student Israel Regardie later said that Crowley played the beast partly as a test. If the word beast or Satan shuts down your thinking, you're still under the spell, and I'm pretty sure there will be many of those in the comments below. But it is undeniable that that role also trapped him. Once a culture has decided that you are the Antichrist, it becomes very hard to talk about anything deeper. To this day, you will find people who assume that Crowley literally worshipped evil, when in fact his entire system is about the union with one's holy guardian angel and the discovery of the true will, the highest mystical attainment. So, before going crazy in the comments below, let us look at what that system means from the inside, at what B666 means in Thelema. In Thelemic philosophy, 666 is linked not only to the sun in general, but to a specific solar spirit named Sorath, and to the idea of a sorpholic life force. The beast is the embodiment of that force. He is the outgoing, explosive current of will that creates worlds. On the Tree of Life, Crowley associated Therion, the beast, with the Sephira Chokmah, which is wisdom in the sense of divine and dynamic masculine energy. Opposite to him stands Babalon in Bina, the Great Mother who receives and understands. Their union produces the manifested universe, the reconciliation of the opposite, the great work made manifest. In other words, the beast is not the destroyer of the divine order. He is the engine of divine creativity. And this is where the famous Thoth Tarot images come into play. In older tarot decks, the card called Strength is usually shown as a gentle woman closing the jaws of a lion, a picture of calm control over animal passion. Crowley and Lady Frida Harris threw that out and designed a card called Lust instead. On their Lust card, a naked woman crowned with the name Babalon rides a many-headed beast in ecstasy. She is not ashamed. She is not taming the beast. She is drunk of the wine of the Graal she holds aloft, and that wine is the lifeblood of the saints and sages and sinners alike. Every type of human experience, from saint to poet to satyr to adulterous woman, is represented in the heads of the beast and poured into the cup. This is Thelema's reframing of the Whore of Babylon scene in Revelation. Where John saw an abomination riding the beast to destruction, Crowley sees the sacrament of life itself. Babylon and the beast together embody love under will, the passionate embrace of existence, the creative lust that says yes to incarnation instead of dreaming of an escape. The background of the card is filled with swirling circles of light that hint at the Sephiroth, the spheres of the Tree of Life, but in a new, still-forming order. Crowley comments that every new eon demands a new classification for the universe, and this image is, for him, a snapshot of that reordering. And so we have two versions of the same image. In Christian apocalyptic imagination, the beast and the scarlet woman are warnings. They are what happens if humanity surrenders to false worship, to sexual excess, and political tyranny. They must appear, wreak havoc, and be destroyed in order for the Lamb to triumph. In Thelema, the beast and Babylon are icons of liberation. They represent the integration of everything Christianity pushed into the shadow: sex, pride, the body, knowledge, the desire to be more than just a sheep. They are not the enemies of God because, in Thelema's cosmology, there is no absolute split between God and the world in the first place. The beast is God's own wild face riding through existence. And all that we discussed thus far sits inside Thelema's broader theory of the eons. Crowley divides spiritual history into vast ages. The Aeon of Isis is prehistoric, a matriarchal time. The Aeon of Osiris is the age of the dying and rising god, the era of sacrifice and redemption, which for him includes classical paganism and Christianity. And the new Aeon of Horus is the age of the crowned and conquering child. In the Osirian age, the ideal image is the lamb, the suffering god who dies for the others. But in the age of Horus, the ideal image is that of the hawk-headed child who stands upright in his own power. The law of that aeon is summarized in the aphorism, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love on the will." And of course, as we said many times, that does not mean do whatever you like. It means to discover and enact your true will with full responsibility without hiding behind outside authorities, nor waiting for some sort of vicarious atonement. Within that framework, the B666 is not the final enemy of Christ. He is the herald of a new formula. He stands for the human being who has stepped out of the old guilt system and into a conscious co-creation with the divine. Where the Antichrist of fundamentalist imagination is a tyrant who forces one-world conformity, the Thelemic beast is that part of you that refuses to be ruled by fear, even religious fear. So when Peter Thiel and any other billionaires, pundit and robber barons start warning their audiences about the Antichrist, telling them to fear global cooperation, to fear environmental action, to fear any movement that talks about peace and safety, it's worth asking whose interest that terror truly serves. If you take Crowley's reading seriously, the true problem is not some external beast that will stamp 666 on your forehead. The problem is what happens when we project our untamed divinity outward, call it Antichrist, and then let other people weaponize that fear against us. The Christian Antichrist is, at the heart, an archetype of fear. He is the story you tell when you want people to distrust their own power, their own bodies, their own desire for knowledge, and to hand all that over to some spiritual strongman who promises safety. The Thelemic B666 is, by contrast, an archetype of integration. It says that what you are afraid of might be the very thing you need to understand and redeem. The solar number 666, once dreaded as a curse, it then becomes an emblem of the sun and of the human life lived fully. And you don't have to become a Thelemite to feel that force and that shift. The next time you hear someone on television or in a lecture hall muttering darkly about the Antichrist and using that language to push you towards paranoia, remember that there are other ways to read that symbol. You can see the beast as a tyrant out there, or you can see it as a challenge in here. The demand that you stop demonizing your own will, your own intelligence, your own capacity for ecstasy and transformation. And so in that sense, 666 is not a threat, it's a question. What will you do with that power that is already yours? Thank you for listening thus far. If you did come to the end of this video, please leave a sun emoji in the comments. And if you want to support what I do, please remember to like, hype, subscribe, share this video, and if you want more, there's all the links in the comment section below to my books, to my courses, and to everything I do. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love and the will.